With me today is Mark Peng, who founded PSLE Ninja. I came across several strategies which were quite new to me. A couple of them that I thought was something that parents should know about. Right? One is spaced repetition, which is what we are covering today. It's also known as retrieval practice. And the other one that I thought will be especially helpful to parents is to build metacognition skills in their kids, which is the focus of another video podcast. Let me just say a little bit about Mark. He's a Singaporean father of two, but he's currently in Estonia learning from some of the best educators in the Nordic countries. He's been exploring how the Nordic education system builds deep understanding of various subjects in their kids, and how this know-how can be brought to Singapore. Anyway, Mark, thanks for flying down here to do this video podcast with me. I know you've actually incorporated some of these strategies, including spaced repetition, in your app called PSLE Ninja, which is an exam preparation tool. Mark, welcome. Tell us more about spaced repetition and why you started this.
Thanks, Sandra, for having me here. The inspiration was naturally my own children. They are very diligent, self-directed, sometimes competitive as well. They proactively ask for exam papers and assessment books, and I can see they put in the late nights. It's heartbreaking as a parent when you see your own children putting in the effort without any pressure from yourself, and then you see the burnout, you see the stress and the frustrations that come along with it.
Yeah.
So naturally, I reached out to people close to us, friends, family. What do you do in a situation like that? What have you done with your own children? The responses I got were discouraging, and there was a very alarming pattern to all of it. It was always put in more hours. Maybe you need a better tutor or tuition center. Cut back on playtime, social, things like that. I could see myself becoming resentful if I were that child. So I didn't want to put that on my own kids.
On your kids, yeah.
Then my daughter comes to me and she loves watching these did you know geography facts on social media. And she says, "Hey, Daddy, do you know that Finland is like the happiest people for 5 years in a row?" I'm like, okay. I didn't have an education swing to this at the time, but when I researched that, the line that stood out to me is that they have a less is more approach to education. And that was interesting because that's exactly what I wanted. Seemed like a holy grail for how you revise. So booked the ticket, contacted a couple of instructors on LinkedIn, and then in the process of visiting neighboring countries like Estonia and Sweden, I found that spaced repetition, what we're talking about today, was baked very meticulously into the curriculum.
Wow.
Right? So it was systemic for them to use this methodology to help kids revise without the stress.
Okay.
I learned a little bit, came back to Singapore, and I tried it out on my own children. We got a couple of iPads and we scheduled this whole thing out. I'll give you examples later. And I saw the results improve. To manage that scale, being a tech person, I built a little app to help my kids, to help families. Then word of mouth spread. And before you know it, we had a bunch of users and we had to be a little bit more commercial and intentional about how we deploy these things.
Right.
But that's how it started.
So. Okay. How old are your kids? What are their names?
So Yul and Maya, they are 14 and 13 respectively. They've already gone through the PSLE.
Okay.
But I'm glad that at the time they went through it, we were no longer in that state of mind of being stressed.
So let's get into what exactly is spaced repetition, right? I mean, obviously we both think that it's a method that really works and it will help kids. From my own research, and I really researched into it, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to education and learning strategies and stuff. So it seems to me like it's one of the most effective methods for committing information to long-term memory. The theory goes that information sticks in your brain if if you recall it right on the verge of forgetting it, what the people call the forgetting curve, right? So, in other words, as you gradually master a topic, the material, the length of time between when you recall and when you start to forget gets longer. So it's really about, I can understand why they call it retrieval practice, yeah? Can you add to this? Tell us more about it, how it works, and more importantly, how can it be used?
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So our bodies and our minds are wired for survival, right? And we often see forgetfulness as a weakness or some bug with our system. It's actually a feature. It's the mind basically being efficient. I remember important things
Right.
needed to operate in the
Right.
current situation I'm at, and I forget things that are not relevant to me.
Right.
Right. So sometimes forgetfulness or the wanting to forget manifests as just disinterest.
Okay.
So scientists have this thing they call the half-life
Right.
of a memory. As the name implies, it means that at some point after you learn something, half of what you've learned
Yeah.
cannot be retrieved anymore.
Right.
Or you could look at it the other way. And so if you start revising or going back to that content just at the half-life towards when you're about to forget,
Right.
you actually stretch the memory like a muscle,
Okay.
right? Too easy and there's no effect, too hard and it becomes discouraging. So that's where the forgetfulness curve comes into play.
Okay.
And we'll go deeper now into how
Into
spaced
that.
repetition hacks this forgetful curve to help you learn and remember many, many, many things.
Okay, so let me just reiterate some of the points you're making. So as you gradually master the material, a topic, the length of time between when you recall and when you start to forget gets longer.
Correct.
Okay, so when you schedule a study session or practicing something in particular over a period of time, you're supposed to practice the questions at intervals, and they can be spaced progressively further apart, right? And that way you begin to commit the information to long-term memory.
Correct.
Right. Mark, can you go more into how a parent can guide their child in using spaced repetition? When I was doing all this reading, I also came across many digital tools. Are they really useful, these digital tools? Can students use these tools to create maybe flashcards or quizzes, I guess, to help with recalling the topics they studied?
To answer that, let me talk about one principle that's very useful for parents to understand
Okay.
before they begin a spaced repetition cycle. It's called immediate feedback.
Okay.
Traditionally, we would give the child an assessment book or an exam paper and we would leave them to it. I'll come back and mark the paper later. I'll give you half an hour. The child works on the paper, and then when they're done, they come and let you know. Maybe you're busy, so you can only mark it like 2 hours later, 3 hours later.
Right.
And when that happens, you then focus primarily on the questions that they got wrong,
Yeah.
right?
We tend to do that.
The
right?
problem with that is that the child was using probably 100% of their brain at the time they were attempting the questions.
Right.
And then time has passed. They've forgotten the thinking process, not just the answers.
Right.
So immediate feedback is a process where you sit with the child, you prepare the material beforehand so you understand it.
Right.
And as the child answers the question, you get feedback from them, such
Okay.
as, why do you think this is the correct answer?
Okay.
Why do you think the other answers are wrong?
Okay.
If they get the question correct, question their confidence.
Yeah.
If they get the questions wrong, provide hints, teach them how to use process of elimination of thought to basically come to the right answer.
Right.
So immediate feedback is very important as a component when you apply it to spaced repetition.
Okay.
The tools you mentioned help with immediate feedback.
Okay.
When I was studying for exams,
Yeah.
and this was before the internet and everything else, we would write all the important answers on flashcards. We would write the question on one side, the elaboration on the other. Friends, we do this. We have lots of fun. We use colored markers. We write it down.
Yeah.
We hang out at the
That's
fast food
right.
chains. And then
Yeah.
we would quiz each other.
Right.
And we were doing that We were asking you the question, you were answering the question, and at the
Right.
same time, I was using the explanation that I wrote on the back
Right.
to teach you. And that sort of peer-to-peer immediate feedback sort of teaching helped us.
Yeah,
So
that
the
can be very effective.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the digital tools that you mentioned
Yeah.
are just the modern version of it that
Okay.
parents can use to put questions as well as elaborations in for the children to revise.
So, Mark, let's put it all together. How can parents get their kids to use the spaced repetition method while they're revising?
All right, I'll show you an example. Let's say you're practicing fractions for math on the 1st of April. To prevent any forgetting, you should schedule the next revision as soon as possible, ideally the next day. So
Okay.
in this case, we'll pick the 2nd of April. Now, at the end of that revision, you evaluate the performance.
Okay.
If the child's recall was very good, you set the next revision date some time away, reasonable time. In this case, I've put 3 days.
Okay.
If the child's recall is not very good, the sooner the better. So in the other case, you do it the next day. And then you continually repeat this process. Every time recall is good,
Yeah.
you space the next revision further away.
Okay.
The number of days is not important. In the
Right.
example here, I use 3, 5, and 7. But you'll find that you understand with your own child what days work best. And you'll
Okay.
also notice that as you do this more often with them, that spacing can actually become larger and larger.
Okay.
Practice it with one topic, and after that, you can extrapolate it to a whole bunch of other topics across subjects. And then use a tracker so that you understand which topics your child isn't that good with, and so that you may want to, even have like spot quizzes when you're out having lunch or dinner sometime.
Okay, thank you. You've given us a very good understanding of how exactly spaced revision can be used, given good examples, and thank you so much to the PSLE Ninja team. Before we end this video podcast, I urge parents to check out our other video podcasts on another important revision method called metacognition. You can find it on the PSLE Companion website. It offers many other resources, not just videos, but also articles and worksheets that parents can use to guide and support their children.